What is going on, everyone? This is Drew Code Sports Talk, and I am your host, Andrew Wright. And I am doing this as a solo episode because Cody actually did an episode last night by himself. Unfortunately, I was not able to join him. I was able to do it today. He was not able to do it today. So our schedules didn't line up. But we are happy to do two separate episodes. It is it's always nice every now and then to kind of do a solo show without thinking that you're dominating the conversation, which goes through my mind quite a bit when we record. Not for him, it's mainly for me because I can talk. So if you guys listen to the podcast, of course, you already know that. So there's a lot to talk about today. Cody did a great job on the episode. I already listened to it. I thought he did a wonderful job hitting on a lot of points. And, shout out to Cody for doing a great solo episode. But before we get into everything that is going on in the world of sports, I just want to say please follow us on all of our social media sites, which is Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, YouTube. We're on all of that. Please follow us, subscribe to us, comment, like on any of our posts. Anything and everything does help. So we would appreciate that. And we definitely try and post as much as we can. But as we say in a lot of these episodes, listen, this is a hobby of ours, as much as we want to be, full on gung ho, Drew Code Sports Talk, we do have lives, we have kids, wives, jobs, so things do get in the way, and this is just really for fun. We enjoy talking about sports, and we decided to make it a podcast. So anyway, we would appreciate love and support on all that. So thank you for those that do follow us and comment already. But we always are looking for new people. So all right. Also Cody does have a good job where he posts on drewcodesportstalk.com. So if you aren't familiar with all the social media sites that we are on, you can just go to our website and find them there. We also have links to our partners over at FNX Fit. We have links to, sorry, I'm totally blanking, the Fanatics and also SeatGeek, where you can get $20 off of your first purchase by using our link. So please go do that right away. There's a lot of things that are coming up here. A lot of NFL games. Go use your SeatGeek. There's a lot of concerts coming up. I know I'm going to a concert, actually two concerts pretty soon. Cody's going to one this weekend. So, there's a lot of things that are happening. So go use SeatGeek. Go get $20 off your first purchase. You kind of would be dumb not to be perfectly honest. So go do it. So, all right, guys. Well, I am absolutely thriving here. I am so ready to do this. I'm kind of doing something a little different. So, like I said, Cody did a solo show, and Cody, he really talked about what happened in week one with a lot of games. I don't know if I'll run through them that much. I want to hit on the Raiders, obviously, but I kind of wanted to go into week two preview, but more of the betting lines. Now, I'm just using ESPN.com and their betting lines. I don't know. I think they get it from Caesars. I'm not 100% sure on that. And of course, now no one can trust Caesars right now. If you don't know what's going on with Vegas, just go on Google, type in Las Vegas, and that'll probably be the first one that pops up. There's a lot going on. But anyway, I'm just really, really looking forward to doing this. Cody doesn't feel very comfortable when we do the betting lines, not because he's uncomfortable betting, but he's uncomfortable he's not really familiar with everything. So he usually just leaves that up to me. So I'm actually really happy to do this. And of course, I really want to talk about the NL and AL wild card in Major League Baseball, pushing for postseason play. This is getting kind of crazy, the postseason race. And I was, just talking to my buddy Brad, a friend of the pod. We were talking about how there's really no, like, usually in baseball, there's a group of like 5, maybe 6 teams in the league that are just bad, just really bad. Like, you don't even like think about them anymore. And I was kind of looking at other teams, and I was just like, oh man, the White Sox are really, really bad. They're not winning like hardly any of their games. And then you look at their roster, and you're like, that's not an easy win. Even if you think that, hey, this team isn't winning as many games as they should, like they're still a hard out. You look at the Tigers. The Tigers are actually, first of all, they have a better record than the White Sox, which is wild in and itself. But you look at the Tigers, they're actually playing really good baseball. It's just unfortunate that they don't have all the necessities to advance to the postseason. And I think a couple more years, the Tigers could be something to deal with. That's for sure. So a lot to talk about. And so without further ado, let's get going. All right. Well, first, I did want to talk about the Raiders game. So I watched this game start to finish. Maybe missed a couple of plays here and there, but for the most part, I watched this whole game without any interruptions. I was actually at my in-laws' house watching this game. We were actually celebrating everyone's September birthdays, and so we were all there, hanging out. And I told my wife, I said, "Hey, I'm going to go upstairs. I'm going to watch the Raiders. I'll be down when they're done." So it was really fun. We had a really good time. It was really just me and my wife's grandpa. We were watching the Raiders the whole game and just talking, and it was really fun. But a couple of takeaways that I got from the Raiders, first and foremost, was I didn't learn much about the Raiders. I know a lot of people, specifically Raider Nation, wants to jump up and be like, "The Raiders won. We still dominate the Broncos." I listen. Yes, was I happy? Was I cheering that we won? Was I cheering, going, "Yeah, Raiders, baby," when we scored the touchdowns? Yes, of course I was. But at the same time, I have to look at it. It's just, I think it's me being a pessimistic person in and of itself. And my wife and I actually joke about, most of the time when we hear something good, our first thing is we're thinking of the negative, or the worst case scenario of what can happen. And that's just me as a person, unfortunately. But this is kind of how I see it in my lens. How I saw the Raiders. And really what the Raiders I see is there's not much spunk on offense. Now, I do believe that this Broncos defense is actually still a really good defense. They still have a really good secondary. Their linebackers, I think are above average. I wouldn't go any further than that. And I do believe their defensive line has taken a step back since last year. Obviously, they had Bradley Chubb. They traded him to the Dolphins, and obviously they don't have him anymore. So, I really just didn't see much from this Broncos team. I think that is the biggest takeaway for me. Is I thought I would see a bigger change in the Broncos, and to a certain degree, you could kind of see Sean Payton's hand in certain things. But I think what a lot of people are forgetting is we're forgetting about the off season is not enough time for everyone to get on the same page. And this is what I had said in last week's episode about preseason. We're now seeing that preseason is somewhat important. And of course, we're happy that the preseason is shorter, the NFL season is longer. We want to see, more meaningful football than non-meaningful. But at the same time, you're starting to understand, or you're starting to see how important preseason really truly is. And you kind of get the kinks out. And like, for example, the Eagles played last night against the Vikings. I didn't think the Eagles were that fantastic. I think in the second half they played a lot better. But like first half for both teams wasn't very good, and I really do think that it takes a little bit for these teams, and that's why I had said on this podcast last week that you're probably not really going to get a good grip on what teams are going to be throughout the whole season until about week 5, because these teams have not gotten enough reps, or these players, even though they're professionals and they're on the same team or they've been in the league for a while, it still takes some time to getting used to. It takes time to get used to getting hit. And this is where I feel like college football really struggles, and why everyone loves college football, especially in the first 5 weeks or so, because anything can happen. Because these teams don't get preseasons. College teams don't get preseason. They just get thrown into the season, and there you go. You got to start playing. And so there are a lot of upsets that happen because teams you really don't know who you are until you've played a few games. That's why we've seen the Grambling State, beat, or Appalachian State beat the Michigan teams before. We've seen, we've seen as Fresno State. We've seen them, beat some big dogs before. So, there's the famous one that I know Fresno State remembers very, very fondly, is when we played Oregon State, where I believe they were like the number 5 team. Some people say they were the number 1 team at some point, and we beat them in Fresno, and it was a big deal. I mean, it was such a big deal. Fans ran onto the field, knocked down the goalpost, and ever since then, we're not allowed on the field anymore, rightfully so. But anyway, so yeah, you just, this is what happens when you play these early games. Anything and everything can happen. And unfortunately, without being kind of prepared, you kind of have to play in the games to kind of end up being prepared. And that's an issue. And I think that's what we're seeing. And I think that's what happened with the Broncos. I think Russell Wilson, there was a lot of just short passes. I mean, they were not taking deep shots at all. I don't remember too many receivers catching the football. I felt like it was more the tight end, the running back type thing, which is fine. And they were able to drive pretty well. But something that Cody did say to me during the game, and I know he said this in the episode as well, is the Raiders, one thing we can say is they got better at tackling. Open field tackles were huge in this game. There was a lot of times where a guy would catch it and it was one-on-one, and as a defender, you have to win that. Otherwise, this guy is going to continue to run. And what I saw with the Raiders is they made those tackles. They stopped the Broncos in their tracks, and I think the Broncos were really, really, and I felt like the offense was really reliant on those types of plays. So, the offense winning those one-on-ones, and we really benefited from winning those instead. And I think that really slowed what the Broncos were doing, which is great. That was fantastic. It was great to see. Another thing that I did see is Jimmy Garoppolo. He did kind of struggle. I know Cody was on here and he was saying that, Jimmy Garoppolo is very capable. He was doing the right things. And for the most part, I agree with him. I think he did a really good job. I think a better job than I think what a lot of us thought, especially me for sure. But there were a lot of underthrows, and that was concerning to me. And I kind of put it in the perspective of especially the game last night with the Vikings and Eagles, where Kirk Cousins underthrew Justin Jefferson. It was in the first quarter. He underthrew him twice like 2 throws in a row, and it really stopped any momentum that Minnesota was actually starting to get. But because he underthrew him, JJ had to end up, making a diving catch or kind of slowing down his speed to catch the football. And then by that time, the defender has time to catch up. So there are, sorry, my dogs are going off. But there are things that can derail a drive. And it sounds silly, but something as little as an underthrow can do that because from what I saw, if Justin Jefferson would have gotten that ball in stride, he would have taken off. And I felt like there were a lot of times where he tried to take, he tried to go like a more of a like a medium pass. He needed some touch on it, and he just put way too much touch on it and like completely underthrew it. So I don't know. I'm a little still indifferent about Jimmy Garoppolo. I wasn't impressed with him. Now the third down run that we're all, as Raider Nation, we're all screaming about, that was great. That was fantastic. And listen, I know everyone wants to be like, well, it's great to have a quarterback who runs on third down and gets the ball out of his hands quickly. Listen, of course it is. Yes, it's great. Did there were times where Derek Carr, held on to the ball too long? Of course. But you're going to see Jimmy Garoppolo did a lot of that too. And there were times where Jimmy Garoppolo that I saw, especially in the red zone, the first red zone that we had, he tried to force 2 straight passes where there was no pressure on him. He rolled out, tried to make something happen, and he just kind of tried to force things. And it was like, just live to see another play, man. Don't throw this ball where the defender can intercept it. And then he did end up throwing an interception. It was a tip pass, but still, it was an interception, and it wasn't on the receiver. It was on him. So there are issues that I can see that we need to get better at. They said the pass protection was, I believe I saw a stat where the pass protection for Jimmy Garoppolo in that game was the best out of the whole week, which is fantastic. I don't see that happening or continuing because, like I said, I don't think the Broncos' defensive line is that impressive. I think they've taken a step back. So I do think we benefited from that. But it was also good to see that the offensive line is really doing a great job right now. What I was a little discouraged of is the run blocking by the offensive line. I thought that was not fantastic. I felt like there were a lot of times where Josh Jacobs just got stuck in the mud because he had nowhere to go. And the line just completely broke right away as the ball was snapped. So, of course, there's always going to be mistakes, but overall, it was good. It was nice to see. Listen, I'm not impressed with what the Broncos were running, so I think it's a hard judge. It's hard to judge how the Raiders really played. It was a great win, though. Nonetheless, it was encouraging, and hopefully we can see a win in week 2 for sure. And let's get into that, actually. So the Buffalo Bills lost a pretty interesting game on Monday night, and I got to be perfectly honest. The one thing that the Raiders have going for them is a little bit of momentum, getting that first win off their back. Okay, we don't have to worry about that anymore. That's great. The second thing that we don't have to worry about is we are on a regular week, whereas the Bills are on a short week. Now, it's just one day. Everyone, that's overreacting to think, oh, well, it's on a short week. Well, it technically is. Sometimes you need that extra day to really recover your body, especially from a first game. It's not fantastic to be the team with a short week. And so you're going to see some mistakes continue for the Bills. And I think what the Raiders hopefully can do is if we get turnovers, where it looked like Josh Allen was handing out turnovers last week, if we can continue to have him do that, the Raiders could really thrive. This could be a really good game for the Raiders. Having said that, it is in Buffalo. So the Raiders going from Denver to Buffalo is going to be a hard one. They're going to the East Coast, and it's a 10 o'clock game, so it's the early game. So we'll see what happens. But luckily, it's not going to be super cold in Buffalo, or from what I've seen. Um, so that'll be encouraging. We're not going to really have to deal with weather. Maybe possibly you might have to deal with like rain, but other than that, I think it'll be pretty favorable for the Raiders. I don't think they're in that big of a disadvantage here in Buffalo. But what I will say is the one thing that does scare me is Buffalo did kind of have a bad game this past week. And usually when teams have a really bad game or like a really bad loss, they come back on fire the next week. And that's what I'm a little worried about. But as I'm going to get to here in just a little bit, the line is a pretty big line. And so, I don't know if I see this big of a win for the Bills, but I do think the Bills will win this game. So that's all I'll say about that. So before we get into those sports betting lines, let's talk a little bit about Aaron Rodgers. Listen, I know, Cody already talked about Aaron Rodgers, but I did want to bring this up. I think the Jets are pretty much done doing anything, barring a Zach Wilson injury. The reason I say that is not only did they pay a lot of money for Aaron Rodgers, and he took a pay cut so they could sign other guys, which they did. So the issue is, is if the Jets try and trade for someone else, another quarterback, let's say it works out. Okay, well, then what do they do? What do they do with Aaron Rodgers? Because for all intents and purposes, let's not argue about this. Aaron Rodgers is coming back. There's no way he is going to start his Jets career, get hurt on the first game, and just be like, you know what, I'm done. I don't see that happening. Maybe he will. I mean, Aaron Rodgers has surprised us before, but I do think it's a little crazy to think that Aaron Rodgers is not coming back next year. I 100% believe that Aaron Rodgers is going to come back next year and he's going to be the Jets quarterback. So you can't really trade for a quarterback. At least someone of sustenance. Like you can't get a guy who can really do a bang up job. I kind of feel like the Jets are really their only play here, and I think their best play is to roll with Zach Wilson, because not only listen, I know Jets fans are going to be like, well, listen, we want to win. We're ready to win now. This is what we were ready for. And I understand that. But at the same time, you guys have already admitted Zach Wilson was kind of a whiff. He was kind of a whiff as the second overall pick in that draft. So what we need to do is we're going to give him some experience. There's going to be teams who see something in Zach Wilson. They're going to say, listen, we're going to want to sign him, or we're going to want to trade for him. We can build him up. I mean, on the top of my head, I think, like, let's say Jordan Love has a pretty okay year, or he looks like he did against the Bears this past week, and maybe that's him the whole time. You put Zach Wilson behind him, you know that Jordan Love is a capable quarterback. He's a guy who is going to be the starter. So then you bring in Zach Wilson, a guy where you can kind of develop him. Hey, maybe then you can use him as a trade piece, or if something happens to Jordan Love, you can bring him into Green Bay. I think that's an option. I don't see Green Bay actually doing that, but I'm just saying as an example. There are teams who are going to look at Zach Wilson throughout the whole year, and they're going to be like, there's something that you can build on. I believe I can do this. And so I say you roll with Zach Wilson. The only thing I do see happening, and I'm a little afraid of, is that offensive line is really bad. I even said it on this podcast when we were talking about our records on every single team, and let's be honest, my record prediction for the Jets is not going to be anywhere close now. But I do really think that this offensive line is really bad, and obviously we saw it in the first 4 minutes of the game. And now you're probably going to see it with Zach Wilson, because he's going to hold the ball a little too long. And the other issue that you're going to have is there's a possibility that Zach Wilson is not a big dude. He's not super scrawny, but he's not quarterback size, in my opinion, yet. I think he still has a little more to add to his body, and I think that's a recipe for injury. And if that happens, the Jets are going to, and he's had injuries in the past already with the Jets. So the Jets are going to have to be somewhat cautious of, okay, we're going to bring in a third quarterback. Who are we going to bring in? I mean, Mike White would have been the one that they should have re-signed, but they wanted to obviously keep Zach Wilson, which makes sense. Listen, the Jets don't want to just like run away with their and just be like, hey, listen, we blew this pick, even though I think it would have been the best idea, but I understand their thought process of like, we don't want to just like destroy this kid's confidence and, him never believe he's going to be playing in the NFL again. So I understand why they kept him. I understand why they didn't sign Mike White, but hindsight is always 2020, and probably Mike White would have been the better option just because he had a little bit more success than Zach Wilson did. So we'll see what happens with that, but really sad to see Aaron Rodgers go down. That was really I texted Cody, a bunch of my other friends that I sent, he tore his Achilles. He's done. He's out for the year. There is no way he's coming back. And I mean, I didn't want to. I wasn't, thinking, oh, I want to be right. It's just from what I saw, the way he was limping, it reminded me like almost to a T of when Kobe Bryant did it, and then he walked up to the free throw line and took his 2 free throws and made them. The way he was walking when he got up really reminded me of the Kobe Bryant injury, and I was like, that's his Achilles. He's done. And sure enough, unfortunately I was right. And listen, not a huge Aaron Rodgers fan in the perspective of as a franchise quarterback. As a guy who plays football, who plays the quarterback position, I love watching him because he's just amazingly smart and great. But he's caused a lot of chaos, and I don't want to say he had this coming. I'm not going to say that, but it does kind of feel like kind of one of those how you would say, almost like a karma thing, almost. But I don't know. I don't want to speak ill of him because it does suck that the guy got hurt, and no one really thought that was going to happen in the first 5 minutes of the game. Hey, I didn't. I had him in one of my fantasy leagues as the starting quarterback, and I ended up being wrong on that one. So it's just one of those freak accident things, and hopefully he gets better because football is better with him playing. So I'll say that. All right. Well, let's talk about the picks that I have. So, like I said, I'm doing this via ESPN. They have their betting odds, the spread. Now, this spread was made at, I believe, after Monday. No, these spreads might have been on like right after Sunday. Like they pop them out pretty quickly. So, we'll give the first one. The first one I actually had. So if you don't know where to get these from, you can go to ESPN on the fantasy app. They have fantasy games is what it's called. You click on that. There's Pigskin Pick'em, and you can pick from the confidence. You can pick straight up who wins and loses, or you can pick through the spread, which I like to do the spread. It's kind of fun. It's interesting for me. So last week I actually went 7-9, so I didn't have a winning record, but I did okay for not knowing what's going to happen in week one. So yeah, a lot of so something about me when I look at the spreads is I don't like big numbers, and usually a big number to me is like 6 or higher. If a team is favored by 6 or higher, I usually try to go the other way, and that's kind of what I did with the Vikings and Eagles. So the Eagles were favored by 7.5. So I actually picked the Vikings to cover, but I would I had the Eagles winning outright. So I just had the Vikings to cover, and they did. They ended up losing by 6 points. So they covered there. And that's because that number was too big. And honestly, I wasn't impressed with the Eagles last week. To be perfectly honest, wasn't that impressed with them this week. I think they ran into a pretty underachieving Vikings team, and we saw that against Tampa Bay last week. So, I don't think the Eagles have been necessarily tested that much this year so far. Yes, their games have been close. I understand that. I understand the Patriots game was close, and now this Vikings game was close. But, I do worry about that offensive line a little bit. They were breaking down on the run game quite often, or at least the design runs for Jalen Hurts. They were just breaking down so quickly. I wasn't impressed with Jalen Hurts' throws all that much. There was one to A.J. Brown that obviously got called back for holding, but that was a really good throw. And then the Devontae Smith, I know a lot of people want to, hey, that was a great throw, it was great catch and all that, but he kind of underthrew him. Devontae Smith, made a great move to march into the end zone. So I don't know. Maybe I'm a little too picky, but I'm not completely sold on Jalen Hurts. Listen, he's a great player, but it's kind of starting to remind me, and I'm going off on a tangent, and I'm very sorry, but it kind of reminds me of the second year that he had at Alabama. So the first year he was doing really well. He was making the throws when he needed to, didn't really have to do too much. The second year is when he had Tua behind him, and he really struggled. And it kind of is starting to remind me of that right now. First year with the Eagles as the starting quarterback, he was doing really well. He was MVP level. It was incredible. And this year so far to start, now again, I'm not going to judge him yet until after week 5, but I also do think that there is some eerily similar things that are happening with Jalen Hurts here in the second year. He actually doesn't look as confident as he did last year, which is crazy to me. That could be because of a new offensive coordinator. It could be some new players around them, but I would keep an eye on that. And I don't think the offensive line for the Eagles is as good as it was last year, as everyone wants to say it was. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, I did have the Vikings cover, and I did. So, all right. So the second game here that we have at the 10 a.m. Time frame is the Green Bay Packers and the Atlanta Falcons. Now the Packers are favored at 1.5, but this is in Atlanta. So a lot of everyone is going with the Packers, and I actually tend to agree. I actually have them winning outright. So obviously over 1.5 points. Listen, I wasn't impressed with the Falcons. I thought they really went away from Bijan Robinson after he scored the touchdown, which I thought was kind of weird. Algier is a great running back. I'll say he's a good running back. But I do think that Bijan Robinson is better. Now I think they're trying to save him, to kind of go through the year. They have 2 good running backs that they can use. So that's the benefit that they have. But the defense, I was not impressed with the Falcons' defense. It's really the Panthers. I don't think their offense is that great, and it was their first game with their new coach, so it's kind of hard to judge how the Panthers are really going to be until we fully see a few weeks into this offense. So I don't know. I just wasn't impressed with the Falcons, and I really don't like Desmond Ridder. I'm sorry. I know we haven't seen much of him, and I haven't watched him fully play week to week. But from what I have seen so far, and even coming out of college, I wasn't really a fan of him. I didn't think he was going to be all that great. He shouldn't be the starting quarterback. Like, I know Marcus Mariota didn't do great, but I kind of feel like maybe the Falcons are kind of wishing they would have kept Marcus Mariota. And I understand what they did was they wanted to see how Desmond Ridder was going to look, and Marcus Mariota didn't like that he was going to get benched. Listen, if you're Mariota, you kind of have to understand the game. You have to understand the business of it. You can't get butthurt by sitting on the bench. Listen, your play was not good. You were not helping this team. You were actually kind of hindering it at some points. So you can't blame the team for wanting to bench you and seeing the rookie quarterback, see how he was going to look. But now you kind of start looking and be like, I think Mariota would have started this year. I think he would have been the starter. But he didn't stay. He went to a team where he's a backup again. And I feel like if you're Marcus Mariota, would you rather start or would you rather be on the bench? I mean, I guess now he'd rather be on the bench, but I don't know. I kind of feel like if you're in a professional sport, most of the time you're wanting to be the starter. You want to play. And I think this would have been his best chance. But anyway, the Packers, I think, are very underrated. I have heard that they're starting to become more late money into the Atlanta Falcons, thinking that they're going to win. I tend to not agree with that. Listen, I know the Packers benefited from running into a Bears team that didn't look very good. But also, I think Jordan Love, although this is the first time we're actually seeing him be the quarterback, he's also been in this offense for quite a few years now, for his whole professional career so far. And so he has the knowledge of this offense. He just has to go out there and perform. And that's what he was building to get to. And now we're seeing, I think he's very capable. I understand he's missing some of his weapons this week. And so he's going to be pretty limited. But I do think that that this Packers team is talented enough. Like, they do a really good job, specifically with these receivers that maybe aren't like these highly touted receivers, but can have some value. They do a great job with them, and they end up working out. So I still believe that not only is this Packers offensive line really good, Jordan Love looked really good. I think they have enough running backs to really help out Jordan Love, and I think the receivers are going to be fine. And Luke Musgrave, listen, he's going to finally really probably see a good amount of catches or targets his way. So it'll be interesting to see there. So I tend to pick the Packers outright. Okay, so let's talk about the Raiders and Bills. This is a 10 a.m. game as well on Sunday. So the Bills are home. They are favored at 8.5. Now, this is wild to me. This is a big number. The Bills didn't look that great. They turned the ball over a lot. Now, I understand they went against a really good defense in the New York Jets, but I also think that the Raiders, they really showed, at least against the Broncos, that the Raiders are a team that will slowly gouge you. I think Josh McDaniels is notoriously known for death by 1,000 cuts, as Trent Dilfer likes to say a lot. He likes to go with the short routes. He likes to go with, and Jimmy Garoppolo, that's what he does. He likes to go with the short routes. And they have these now. I know Jacoby Myers is sitting, but Michael Mayer, the rookie tight end, I think he's going to be a little bit more involved now. Austin Hooper, the starting tight end for the Raiders, I think is going to be looked at a little bit more. Devontae Adams, he was looked at quite a bit, and I think Josh Jacobs is going to be a little bit more involved. So you're going to see a lot more, and I think Hunter Renfrow is actually going to get a target this week. So I do think that the Raiders have a team where they can hold the ball a little bit and keep the Bills on their toes. So I don't think the Bills are going to have a chance to go up by 2 or 3 scores. So I don't like that number. So I would say the Bills are going to win this game, but I will say I'm going to pick the Raiders to cover. All right. So the next game, the 10 a.m. game on Sunday, is the Ravens and Bengals at Cincinnati. The Bengals are the favored team at 3.5. Now, from what I saw with the Bengals, I don't know. Now, the Bengals and Ravens really do a good job of when they play each other. It's always a competitive game. So I don't think we're going to see a Bengals team get completely shut out. Plus, the Ravens are missing a lot still on defense. But I do think because this is a rivalry game, I think the Bengals are going to win this game, but I do actually think the Ravens will cover. Now, the Ravens are dealing with a lot of injuries, not just defensively, but offensively as well. And I think that's going to really pay a toll on this Ravens team. And this is like what the Ravens go through every single year, it seems like. They start off, they're healthy, Mark Andrews gets hurt, or J.K. Dobbins, it seems like every year is out for the year after like 3 weeks. And the defense is actually starting to get a little bit older, and unfortunately, you're seeing that now. The defense for the Ravens is really struggling right now with all their injuries. So I think the Bengals are going to win this game, but I do think the Ravens will cover nonetheless because it is a rivalry game. All right, so the number 5 game is another 10 a.m. game. This is the Seattle Seahawks at Detroit Lions. The Lions are favored at 6.5. Now, like I said in the beginning, I actually don't like those big numbers. I do think the Lions could potentially win by like 10 if they wanted to. But I don't like to pick those just because listen, the Seahawks kind of died against the Rams. And I don't think they're going to come back looking like that in week 2 here. Whether it's in Detroit or not, again, I have the Lions winning, but I actually have the Seahawks covering the 6.5. I think Geno Smith is going to have a better game. That Lions defense is getting better. I think that secondary looked a lot better, but the benefit of having Geno Smith is he can run. And I do think that the Seahawks have some really good running backs, and I think their offensive line really did a poor job in the game against the Rams. So I think they're going to come out a little bit better this week. I think the Lions are running on a way too big of a high, but they did have a nice long week. So I think you're going to see the Lions kind of stuttering a little bit coming out of the. I think you're going to see the coming out of the out of the gate. Sorry, I completely lost my train of thought there. You're going to see them stuttering a little bit, but overall, I think you're going to see the Lions end up winning this game, and the Seahawks will cover. Okay, so the next game that we have is the Los Angeles Chargers at Tennessee Titans. Now, the Chargers are favored at 3.5 here. What I saw with the Titans against the Saints is that Titans team is always going to have, just like a New England Patriot, they're always going to have a really good defense. And this year is no exception. Now, Tannehill didn't look great. If they get into a shootout against the Chargers, I don't see the Titans being able to keep up with that. But what I did see is that Chargers team, their run defense is not good still. And the Titans, who do they have as the running back? I think we all know it's Derrick Henry. So Derrick Henry is a guy who's going to be very good, I think, in this game. I think he's going to have over 100 rushing yards in this game. I think the Titans are going to be in this game. I do, however, think the Chargers are going to win this game, but because it is in Tennessee, it's a hard stadium to win at. And so I do believe the Titans will cover that 3.5. So I have the Chargers winning, but the Titans covering. All right, so the next game, 10 a.m. game, is the Bears and Buccaneers. And this is wild to say, but I'm actually kind of looking forward to watching this game a little bit. I really want to see how Justin Fields will respond, and I want to see how Baker Mayfield will respond. Baker Mayfield had a big upset over the Minnesota Vikings, and the Bears really look terrible against the Packers and are continuing to be owned by Green Bay, which no one in Chicago wants to hear. So it'll be interesting. This game is in Tampa Bay, so the Buccaneers are favored at 3.5. I actually tend to think because the Bears look so bad, they're going to come back and they're going to be great. And I think you're going to see a regression from Baker Mayfield in this game. I have actually the Bears winning, not only covering, but I have them winning outright. So I have the Bears winning this game over the Buccaneers. The money is going to the Buccaneers right now. I tend to think that the Bears, first of all, their defense is not going to play as bad as they did, and secondly, I don't think Justin Fields is going to be playing as bad as he did. I think DJ Moore is going to get a little. He has to get more looks, I think you're going to see a better offensive output by the Chicago Bears. Okay, so a few more 10 a.m. games here. We have the Kansas City Chiefs at Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, I actually, in the beginning when we were picking, the records for all the teams, I actually had the Jaguars winning this game. And to simply put it, it's in Jacksonville. I think this Jaguars team is really underrated, and I don't think the Chiefs have a good enough defense to stop the Jaguars. Now, I think the Chiefs have some really good defenders on their team. I think they have one really good cornerback. I think they have obviously Chris Jones, and their defensive line actually looked pretty decent against the Lions. So I thought they did a really good job. I don't see that continuing. I think that defensive line is going to take another step back. They don't really have the greatest of linebackers, in my opinion. And then that secondary, other than Snead, I don't really like any of their DBs. So I actually think the Jaguars will actually win this game. Zay Jones has been a really good fit for Jacksonville, former Raider. Calvin Ridley absolutely went off last week. Now, I think the Chiefs are going to put a focus on Ridley a little bit, but the run game for the Jaguars is actually pretty decent with this Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne. So I think you're going to see a really good game. So I actually have the Jaguars not only covering, but I have them winning outright. So my pick for this week is the Jaguars. The other 10 a.m. game is the Indianapolis Colts at Houston Texans. So we have two rookie quarterbacks going against each other, Anthony Richardson and C.J. Stroud. Texans look bad. They looked bad last week. Again, it's against the Ravens, so, and they were actually in the game, but I felt like that was more the Ravens trying to figure some things out, and obviously with the injuries that they had. So, and the Colts actually look really good. Anthony Richardson looked really good, but it's in Houston. I think because the Texans came off a pretty bad game, in my opinion, I really do think that and the Colts are the favored ones. They're favored by 1.5. I actually think not only are the Texans going to cover that 1.5, but I do think they're going to outright win. So that's 3 games in a row where I have the Bears, Jaguars, and Texans outright winning over the spread, because I just think Jaguars and Texans specifically are at home, and I just don't think you're going to see much pushback from the other team. I think the Colts really played their hearts out. But I think you're going to kind of see a step back somewhat this week from the Colts. So I'm going to pick the Texans outright here. All right, so now we're in the 1 o'clock window. We have the San Francisco 49ers at the Los Angeles Rams. This one is crazy because the Niners are the favored ones at 7.5. Vegas, did we not watch the Rams completely dismantle a pretty good Seattle Seahawks team? Now, I understand the Niners picked apart the Steelers, but, I had the Steelers only going 8-9. I didn't think they were going to be that great. Everyone's darling was the Steelers this year. I didn't think so at all, and I think that's what we saw. I think the Niners are a fantastic team, of course. I have them winning the NFC West. It's not like I'm delusional, but I think in L.A., I understand all the tickets. Oh, well, San Francisco, they're going to be the ones, and they're always the one. They always dominate the Rams in the regular season. I understand that, but I think Matthew Stafford has had a resurgence and is saying, I can do it even without Cooper Kupp. And I think that defense actually was sneaky good, and I think they have some dudes on that defense. I don't think it's going to be as easy of a game, and I think Sean McVay understands, listen, I can't beat Kyle Shanahan. I need to win against him at least once, and I think he really wants to prove that. So I actually am going to pick the Rams, not to outright win. I do still think that, as I said all that, I do think the Niners are going to win, but I do I can see a scenario where the Rams do actually come out on top, but I will go the safe route here, and I'm just going to pick the Rams to cover that 7.5. Okay, so the next game, 1 o'clock game, is the New York Giants versus at Arizona Cardinals. This game, I really think, is going to be an absolute blowout. I think the New York Giants are going to be on a mission to destroy the Cardinals. They do not want to have another game where the other team is completely dominating them. So I actually am going to go with the Giants here completely outright. They're the favorite at 3.5. I think that's really low. I didn't see much from the Cardinals other than Joshua Dobbs did a pretty nice job for really not knowing that offense. So, but I just think the Giants are back for vengeance. They do not want to be embarrassed another time like they were this past week. So I have the Giants winning probably in a blowout, to be perfectly honest. And I'm going to give you guys a heads up right now. My son just woke up from his nap, so you might hear him talk. So sorry in advance. The next game is the 125 game where we have the New York Jets and the Dallas Cowboys. Everyone is on the Cowboys. They're really high on the Cowboys, and the Cowboys are the favorite at 8.5. That is a big number, and I actually don't like that. I actually am going to have the Jets covering at 8.5. I think the Cowboys will win, but I do think that the Jets will cover. And then why do I say that? Because that Jets defense is actually really good. That Cowboys offense didn't look that great. Yes, the Cowboys defense is really good as well, probably better than the Buffalo Bills that the Jets face. But I do think that the Jets can find ways to move the ball even a little bit. And that run game for the Jets actually looked really good. Breece Hall was fantastic, and I think Dalvin Cook had a few good runs. So I'm actually kind of encouraged by the Jets. Not like I think they're going to do just fine without Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, I think they're going to take a huge step back. But I actually don't think they're like this god awful team, and I think they're actually going to put the Cowboys into a little bit of a hissy. Like I said, I think the Cowboys will win, but I do think the Jets will cover. So another 125 game, we have the Washington Commanders at Denver Broncos. Denver Broncos are favored at 3.5. I was a little discouraged by how vanilla the offense was for the Broncos, and the Commanders not only are a pretty decent defensive team. They're getting Chase Young back this week, I believe. So I think this Commanders team is going to put Russell Wilson in the ground quite a bit. I think they're going to get to him just like the Raiders defense did. And I actually think the Commanders defensive line pass rushers are better than what the Raiders have. So obviously minus Max Crosby. I think Max Crosby is the better one, but they have guys on both sides and in the middle and in the interior, and even some of their linebackers can really do a good job. So I actually think the Commanders are going to make this a very interesting game. I do, however, have the Broncos winning this game because it is in Denver, but I do think the Commanders will cover that 3.5. All right, so the next game is the Sunday night game between the Dolphins and the Patriots. So it's at New England. The Dolphins are the 2.5 favorite. I like the Dolphins in this scenario. I actually would have before we started the season. I actually had the Patriots winning this game, but after watching that Dolphins offense, the offense is ridiculous. And yes, I know it's a Bill Belichick defense. The Patriots always have a really good defense. I understand it. But that Dolphins defense is going to do really good against Mac Jones. And I think that's going to be the difference there, is the Dolphins defense versus the Patriot offense. And I think the Dolphins defense is better. So I think the Dolphins are going to not only outright win, but I think they're going to have at least a 3-point win over the Patriots. So I have the Dolphins winning at 2.5. All right, so we have two Monday night games this week, which the first Monday night game is the New Orleans Saints and the Carolina Panthers. In Carolina, so the Saints are the favorite at 3.5. I actually have the Saints winning this. A lot of people like their money on the Carolina Panthers. According to ESPN, most of the picks are going to the Saints, but a lot of the smart money, as they call it, or the Sharks, are going with the Panthers. I don't like it. I know it's in Carolina. I know Carolina and Atlanta was a close game, and in the end, obviously, Atlanta outlasted them. I didn't like the Panthers' defense. I thought their defense was way better. But I felt like it was more the Falcons making a lot of mistakes versus the Panthers making them get into those mistakes. And listen, they win against Desmond Ridder, who, for all intents and purposes, in my mind, is still a rookie quarterback. So he's still trying to figure things out. So I didn't think he was that great. Whereas you go with the Saints, you have Derek Carr, who is a veteran quarterback. And he's starting to get a really good connection, not only with Michael Thomas, but with Chris Olave. He had a really good connection with Jawan Johnson, and of course Shaheed, who had that game-winning catch on the sideline there that we all notoriously have seen on social media, where he said, just freaking run. I think the Saints are going to win. I know it's in Carolina, like I said, but I really do like the Saints in this scenario. I would take the Saints to win outright and beat the 3.5 there. And the very final game we have. Sorry, I got in my announcer mode. The last Monday night game is the Cleveland Browns at Pittsburgh Steelers. All intents and purposes, the Browns had a really good week last week. The Steelers had a really bad week last week. Yeah, it was really bad. So that's why I think Pittsburgh Steelers are going to not only cover, but and the Browns are the 1.5 favorite. I think Steelers are going to cover and win outright in this game. I think the Steelers actually are going to do a great job against the Browns. I think they know that they have to get the ball out really, really, really quickly against the Browns, specifically after watching the Browns against the Bengals. So I think they're going to do a good job of, just getting that going. They're really going to have to get Najee Harris going, though, for the Steelers. They really need to get that done. And Kenny Pickett is going to have these 2-3 step drop back, and ball's got to be out, or you got to start running. That's got to be the mentality of this week, and I think Kenny Pickett can actually do somewhat really decently. And I think that Steelers defense got really embarrassed by 49ers, pretty much dominating them. So I think they're going to really shut down Deshaun Watson. And for that matter, it wasn't even that hard. The Bengals actually really shut down the Browns quite a bit in that game. So I think the Steelers are going to outright win, and I have the Steelers with a 1.5 cover and win. So there you go. So I'll go down one more time. We don't need to go to the Vikings because that game is already. I have the Packers winning as the favorite. I have the Raiders covering. I have the Ravens covering. I have the Seahawks covering. I have the Titans covering. I have the Bears outright winning. The Jaguars outright winning. I have the Texans outright winning. I have the Rams covering. I have the Giants as the favorite at 3.5 winning. I have the Jets covering. I have the Commanders covering. The Dolphins winning as the favorite at 2.5. The Saints as the favorite at 3.5, and then the Steelers outright winning. So those are my picks. So I know I'm already going over just a little bit, but I'm going to talk about the chaos that is the AL/NL wild card in postseason race for baseball. This is absolutely crazy. What's going on? A lot of the talk is the NL wild card. At least on my Twitter feed, because I am a Giants fan, so we're in the thick of things. But listen. You have the Philadelphia Phillies as the number 1 wild card team at 4 games over third place here. The Chicago Cubs are the number 2 wild card team, just behind or just ahead of the Giants at 2.5. Now the Giants, Diamondbacks, and Reds are all tied for the third, but the Giants do have the edge on this one because they have 1 fewer loss than the Diamondbacks and Reds. Now that the Diamondbacks and Reds also have 1 more win than the Giants, but they go off based on the losses there. So the Giants, Diamondbacks, and Reds are in a real push, and in a very close 4th place is the Miami Marlins at a half game behind those 3 teams that I had just mentioned. This is wild. I don't think the Diamondbacks are going to be able to get in. I think they have some decent pitching, but they have very inconsistent pitching, and I think their hitters have really taken a step back. The Reds, I feel like, caught fire at a good time and are reaping the benefits of that, but I really don't like their pitching at all. Now the Giants is an interesting one. I think the Giants have the experience of being able to get in, but they have too many young guys playing on this team, and I think that's going to be their overall downfall. I actually kind of think the Marlins have the best case of getting in. Jorge Soler, right now he's hurt, but he's going to come back soon. Jazz Chisholm, he's a guy who's hurt right now, but he'll be probably playing in the next couple of days. And their pitching staff is probably I would probably pick their pitching staff over any of this other pitching staff, maybe minus Arizona. I do think Arizona will probably be the closer team to Miami, but I think Miami will actually overcome and be the third team. The reason is I just think they have consistent hitters with Luis Arraez. They have Yuli Gurriel. They have Jorge Soler, as I said, Jazz Chisholm, and then also Jesus Luzardo. Sandy Alcantara, who hasn't had the best of years this year, like he did last year, but he's still a solid veteran pitcher who understands what to do. So I really like this Marlins team. I kind of think they're going to be the team to get in, but it's going to be crazy to watch. I mean, if one of these teams have a bad stretch, it's going to be insane. One thing that I did see, the last 10 game record that they have, it's insane. The Philadelphia Phillies last 10 games are 4-6. The Cubs last 10 games are 5-5. The Giants 5-5. The Diamondbacks 5-5. The Reds 5-5. The Marlins 5-5. It's insane. I mean, it's like no one wants to really grab a hold of the wild card. So it's going to be a really interesting race. And let's talk about the AL wild card now. The AL wild card is almost just as crazy because Tampa Bay, first of all, is right in the thick of things with Baltimore to lead the East. But whichever one of those teams gets the East, they're going to get the number one AL wildcard spot. They are right now it's the Rays who are the number one wildcard spot, and they are 9 games ahead of third place. So they're pretty much golden unless they completely start losing it. Then you have at number 2 the Texas Rangers, who are a game over the Seattle Mariners. But I don't know, man. The Rangers are still a really good team, but they could actually overcome the Astros. I think the Astros are too good of a team to not be in the postseason, so I do think they're going to figure it out and get in. But the really tight race is the Mariners and the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays lost to the Rangers yesterday. And so now the Blue Jays are behind Seattle Mariners by a game and a half, and Seattle has that third spot. So this will be interesting. If I were to look at the rosters and pick who I think is going to be the number 3 team, I would probably pick Toronto over Seattle. I think Toronto has the better pitching staff. I think Toronto has the better hitters. But the thing that Toronto is kind of running into right now is they have a lot of streaky hitters, namely a former Giant, Brandon Belt. He is a guy who is very streaky. And usually towards the second half of the year, he kind of starts slowing down because of injuries. Vladimir Guerrero, he has not been Vladimir Guerrero of last year. Bo Bichette, he's really a streaky player right now. Cavan Biggio, he doesn't really play all that much. Right now, Toronto is really thriving with their Schneider kid. But I think he's going to start taking a step back, especially if they get into postseason. I think he's going to really be overwhelmed there. So I think Toronto is really running into their streaky hitters, where the Mariners, on the other hand, although I don't think they have the better offensive team, I do think they have more consistent offensive players than Toronto. You kind of know what you're getting in Ty France, so you don't expect him to be, this, 30 home run hitter, whereas Vladimir Guerrero Jr., you expect him to probably get about 30 home runs. Obviously, due to injury, he's not going to get that this year. Possibly he could, but I don't think he will. And so I don't know. Like, I think the Rangers are getting in. I think the Astros are obviously going to get in, whether it's the AL West winners or wild card. Same with the Texas Rangers. But the Seattle Mariners, even though they're still in the thick of it with the AL West, I do think they're going to end up being a wild card team, possibly. But if I were to just pick based on the year that they've had, and if I were going to trust trust the players that they have on the team, I would probably trust Toronto. I think Seattle is just going to miss out. I kind of hope that they don't. I kind of hope the Mariners get in over the Blue Jays because the Blue Jays took two of former Giants, so I kind of would like to see them, think that they had a chance of getting into the postseason with the Toronto Blue Jays, and they actually not get in. So, just as a salty fan, so there you go, man. The wild card is absolutely crazy for Major League Baseball, and we're gonna see. We're gonna see what happens. Go Giants! I'm gonna root on. I love the torture baseball because at least we're in the thick of things, which a lot of teams, a lot of fans did not think we were going to be in. I was one of them. I thought maybe we still had a good chance of being in it in August, but then we would kind of fall through in September. I'm kind of hoping I'm way wrong, even though September did not start off very good for us. So we'll see what happens. But this race for wild card in both leagues is absolutely nuts. I'm really looking forward to seeing who gets in, and I'm really looking forward the last few weeks of Major League Baseball to see who gets in. So. All right, guys. Well, that is it for me. I really do appreciate you guys listening. I know I went way longer than Cody, but we all knew I talk more than Cody anyway. So please subscribe to all of our all the podcasts, whichever you listen to, whether it be iHeart, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Please subscribe, rate, and review as well. If it's a 5-star, let us know what you liked about it. Yes, you can, sir. Sorry, my son. If it's a 5-star, let us know what you liked about it, so that way we can continue to do what we do. And if it's a 1-star, please let us know what you didn't like, so that way we can fix that and get better as a podcast. So, I'm doing the spiel a little bit differently because I actually started with some of it in the beginning, so I'm like going crazy here. You know what? I do want to shout out Sanger West Hornets. As you guys know, I announced the football, basketball, and baseball games for the Hornets. So Cody has dubbed me the voice of the Hornets. And actually, some of the people working at Sanger West, they also do call me that. But they are playing Hoover High School tonight, so that'll be a really fun game. It's at Hoover. And I'm really looking forward to it. It's funny because the last place I worked at, which was an eyeglass repair shop, we are like catty corner from Hoover High School, and now we're the new place that I work, which is Sanger West. They're going to be over at Hoover High School, so it's like my two worlds are combining. So I'm going to be paying close attention to that game. I'm really hoping the Hornets can pull out a win. They had some really good things going against a really superior team 2 weeks ago, where they played Justin Garza High School. They got a pretty good quarterback and some really good receivers. And we were in the game throughout until about mid-third quarter. We started kind of trailing off. So hopefully we can put a full game together here this week and beat the Patriots. So go Hornets. Pulling for you guys, and I will be trying to follow as closely as I possibly can. So I will be rooting you guys on. All right, guys. Well, that is it. I am done. Thank you so much again for listening. I do appreciate it. And hopefully next week it'll be Cody and I together doing an episode. Hopefully we can talk about more Raider stuff and whatever else is going on in sports. So until next week, thank you guys so much, and we will see you then.